Thank you again.
Representative McBride.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and to the ranking member as well for organizing this hearing. Thank you so much to the witnesses for your patience as we move all the way down the dais. While today's hearing centers on Syria, the implications reach far beyond its borders. This conversation really is about how the United States shows up in the world and whether we're willing to stay engaged when our influence is being tested. When we step back, when we dismantle tools like USAID and lose our presence on the ground, we leave a gap. And Russia and Iran are quick to fill it. They use instability to grow their power rather than helping the Syrian people build a future. Continued engagement alongside our NATO allies is how we build stability, uphold our values, and convey to the region and the world that we won't cede ground to actors who thrive in and on chaos. Zooming back in specifically, for decades, Syria under Bashar al-Assad served as a base from which terrorism and instability radiated across the Middle East. And woven deeply into that reality is Russian influence. Russia didn't appear in Syria overnight. Their military ties date back to 1971 when the Soviet Union first established the naval facility in Tartus, a strategic base for projecting power in the Mediterranean. Over time, their influence has become embedded in nearly every layer of the Syrian state. Russia began printing Syrian currency. Russia began supplying arms and subsequently servicing their weaponry. And in turn, the Syrian civil war became a proving ground for Moscow's military tactics and weapons. Experience later carried onto the battlefield in Ukraine with devastating consequences for civilians in both countries. Russia has been playing both sides of the coin for over a decade, harboring Bashar al-Assad in Moscow while simultaneously drawing the new Syrian leadership into further dependence. And we know too well Russia's approach is about leverage, not loyalty. Russia builds its leverage through division and fragility. The West seeks to build it through stability. And so my question to Dr. Carlin, as we seek to stabilize Syria and combat Russian influence, what concrete tools does the United States have to reduce Russian influence in Syria, both militarily, economically, and diplomatically?
Thank you very much for highlighting that important question, Congresswoman. It seems to me that the Syrian government's approach toward Russia is similar to its approach writ large. It's got to minimize enemies and maximize friends because it's juggling a whole lot, as we've talked about throughout this hearing. I have gotten the impression that it is not a top 5, top 10 priority from the U.S. perspective to pressure Damascus to downgrade its relationship with Russia. I understand that. There's a whole lot of issues to be worried about, but fundamentally, Russia being there is not in U.S. national security interest, particularly Russia's military being there. And as you highlighted, the Syrian government having this dependence in some ways on Russia in a wide variety of ways. So one thing in particular we can do is just start raising this with Damascus, start showing them that while we appreciate they want a lot of friends, this is actually a friend that we see highly, highly problematic. Other things we can do is to help fill the space and get others to fill the space. So if we are working on security sector reform and professionalizing the Syrian military, they're less likely to turn to others as well. And then really the last piece is efforts at stabilization and reconstruction. So trying to bring in additional regional investment. We've seen the Saudis most recently doing so, European investment as well, all ways to try to decrease the Russian presence.
Certainly that, to me, I think is a sound strategy moving forward. I'm curious your perspective on the administration's destruction of USAID, the undermining of foreign aid, including humanitarian and democratic assistance aid, how that impacts our capacity to effectively execute that strategy.
It absolutely affects it. I mean, we had folks inside USAID focused on helping transition fragile states, and they're not there and they don't have the resources. And so you need someone to do this. And frankly, it's not a wholly altruistic effort. It's not wholly a humanitarian effort. It's actually a selfish security effort. If we see Syria that is not able to be reconstructed, that is able to be stabilized, that is able to be secure, it will fundamentally go against our national security interests.
example playing out in real time about how our destruction of foreign aid undermines not only our values but our own interests. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Representative McBride.